Is the 380 the answer to your prayers, or will it get you killed? Ah! Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Podcast US, one of the world's biggest gun talk programs. I'm your host, Brent T, joined by my illustrious co-host, Roy Huntington, and we thank you for joining us on this virtual gun chat, kind of the old guys sitting on the stool at the end of the gun counter at the gun store. So, Roy, how you doing?
I have no complaints, which is probably just as well because Susie wouldn't care anyway. So,
well, there is that. Well, I got to say, this is actually our second start behind the scenes, and we really should put the bloopers reel together. I started this program, which I've done now 345 times, and I ended up as a blithering idiot. Is quickly becoming a edit point. So we'll get some of those put together one of these days. But anyway, we got a great topic today, one that we've danced around a lot, but I don't think we've ever actually focused a show on it. And that, of course, is the 380, the 9mm short, or John Browning, I think, designed it for the model
1903.
Yeah, 1903. Yeah. And, you know...
Or 1908, actually.
Yeah. Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
I should have done my homework beforehand, but no, it's one of those rounds that I've shot it a lot. I've carried it a lot. And I have to say that now I think it's coming on a lot stronger, especially in our audience, starting with Guns Magazine and now Guns Podcast US, that it's no secret we have an older audience demographic, guys that tend to look like us. And one of the things I've talked about before, and Roy, it's really becoming an issue, is arthritis in my hand. And for folks that are having issues manipulating a slide or can't handle the recoil, the 380 keeps you salty, as they say, and carrying concealed. So now with new ammo, it's a lot better, and it's not quite the 9mm, but it's getting awful close. So Roy, I know you carry a 380 and have carried a 380 for a long time. So why would you choose one?
Well, you know, John Browning in his infinite wisdom was smart and prescient, and I think he magically saw 100 years down the road what he was offering people. And so I think what we have this collusion of technology and engineering, better bullets, more effective powder, that kind of stuff. We have interesting gun designs chambered for the 380, like the Smith & Wesson 380 Easy, that shield, single stack 380. I mean, that really rocked the boat because we had a kind of a compact, not tiny, but compact gun you could actually manage. It real low recoiling, still effective caliber, easy to run, so we have that. Plus, as you say, the older generation of people who grew up shooting, but we just have a little trouble nowadays managing stronger recoil. And so I think where the break, though, is a lot of people just remember, 90 grain full metal jacket 380 ammunition. Now, there's a lot. I mean, thousands of people have been killed with that.
Yeah. So, but not the most effective man stopper there is.
No, as it were, and I think something that we need to keep in mind, though, is that there's Greg Elfrich wrote a very interesting article using actual shootings, not just police shootings, but shootings. And what he found out when he was all done is that caliber almost really didn't matter.
Right.
And I mean, it was pretty much uniform. What percentage one shot stops, what percentage, it was all the same. And what people say, and I think this makes really good sense, is the fact with a police shooting, people shoot multiple shots usually, and they're aggressively after shoot to stop, chase and take people into custody. So you have more shots fired. With non-police shootings, it tends to be get off me shootings. And so it's one or two shots maybe.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, though, is that they both work the same. In other words, a cop shoots somebody with a 9mm 2 or 3 times or 5 times and they stop. A citizen shoots somebody with a 380 2 or 3 times and they stop. You know, and there's a lot of the people who are the minimum is 9mm. They're really uncomfortable with that. They just like, we don't want to hear that. La, 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 you know.
Yeah.
But it's the truth because we have the data. As a matter of fact, we'll put a link to his study. So the reality of it to me is you have a easy to manage cartridge as far as recoil. The cartridge itself is big enough that you can handle it and load a magazine. You ever tried to load a 25 ACP magazine? You know, it's like you can lose one of those under your fingernail.
Yeah.
You know? So you can load the magazine. The guns, you can get the tiny pocket 380s up into medium-sized guns. Are easy to manage. They're easy to manipulate. They're very accurate, easy to control. And then when you factor in modern ammunition, I mean, you see these sort of heavier for caliber 380 bullets at, you know, buffalo bore kind of stuff, you know, where they're going 1,100 feet per second, 1,200 feet per second.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Black Hills Honey Badger, you know, other loads like that. I mean, I've seen the gel, I've shot the gel. And so if you get a 100 grain, 90 grain, 9mm projectile penetrating 12 to 15 inches in gelatin, well, I mean, that's the same as a 9mm, boys and girls.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you have to discount all the energy stuff. People always talk about energy. That doesn't matter. That's a long story. That's a whole nother show, right? But I think back to the adage of use enough gun, you have a gun. Yeah. Well, then that you check off both those boxes, you know?
Yep.
So,
and that was, I mean, I've talked about it before, and actually, about 6 months ago, I came out to your place and we did a rebuild. If you're listening, I'm holding up my AMT 380 backup. And what's interesting, and you can only see this if you go to YouTube, here's my big meat hook of a hand, and you will notice you can't even see the gun behind it, literally. So that was my piece that I carried a lot, carried an ankle holster. And then when we went to external carriers, I carried it in a front pocket, and I never felt undergunned, outgunned. And, you know, you talk about reduced recoil, but one of the things we laughed about recently, I was reviewing a gun out at Roy's, and it was a 380, and it was a very lightweight ported gun. And the first time I fired, it's like, whoa. Well, that was snappy, and there was quite the fireball. So, you know, we tend to poo-poo it. It's a 9 short, and it's, you know, it's just a small little cartridge. Yeah, if you get it in a lighter gun, you will find that it's a little more than what you would think.
You know, it's funny, and I hear what you're saying. I think especially for amateur shooters, people complain about the recoil of a pocket 380 or something, and for me, I don't even feel it. You know, I mean, I'm sorry. And in a shooting, you wouldn't even hear it. You wouldn't feel the recoil or anything. So don't even worry about that. I mean, in the early 80s, I had a SIG P230, I think it was. So it was a 380, little SIG, and it was a lock breech gun. So you could load the snot out of it if you want to. Yeah. So out of curiosity, I did some reloading, and I think I got up to like 115 grain hard cast lead semi wad cutter, but I didn't have access to a chronograph. But from what I could understand from my research, and I did know people at the gun companies, you know, at the ammunition makers, I told them what I was loading, and they said, yeah, you're probably up around 1,100 feet per second, right? So, because it was like recoiled pretty good, right? You know. So I thought, well, why would this not work? You know. Geez, you have a 115 grain bullet. You're 1,100 feet per second. It's 9mm. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately at the time, ammunition manufacturers weren't really that interested in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know that. I think Supervel was the only guy that really had a hot. I almost want to remember Remington had something this like silly 88 grain jacketed hollow point. It had this little minuscule hollow point in it, and all it did was act like ball ammo anyway. So yeah, the poor, you know, it was fighting up stream from the beginning. You know,
I remembered I carry Winchester silver tips. If you do they still make silver tips? I don't think they do they?
Geez, I don't know. They always underpenetrated, and the bullet jackets broke off horribly. They were never that good. That's what they use.
The only game in town at that point.
It was, That's what they use in the FBI shootout, where they shot the guy through the side, so he was dead. He just didn't know it at the time.
Just decided not to die right then.
Right. So, but that's why I think people have to you have to have an open mind. What is it Clint used to say? Keep your open mind. It's like a parachute. It works better when it's open. Yeah. It catches things. And so because when you look at the reality of it, when you read Greg's article, and you see that actually in the real world, because he was very scientific and very aggressive about how he treated this information. If it wasn't really documented, and that's one nice handy thing about being a cop, is that you can call another agency and say, hey, you know what, I'm doing some research on this. Could you give me some information about this shooting? And the average schmo out here, you won't do that. Can't do that. You call a police department, they'll say, who, what, why, right?
Yeah.
Well, he had the wherewithal and the ability to penetrate the defenses so he could get this information. And I was stunned when I read it, and I realized a 32 Magnum 380 with a good bullet. I mean, 22s were amazingly effective. Across the board, it was really, really there. And so that's where I think if you're having trouble with your hands, if you're having trouble with recoil, if you're having trouble manipulating a gun anymore, you can't let your fear of being inadequately armed get in the way of being able to carry an effective gun, because you can't.
Yep.
And so, don't worry about what people may say. Hey, what do you carry? Oh, I carry a 380. Ha 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 ha. Yeah. Well, here, come here, hold still. Let me shoot you with it one time. That's
a point we always make. You never see any gun writers or internet warriors volunteering to go down range and take a few hits. So there's something to that. But no, the serious point you're making is something that we keep hammering here, and it just verifies what we've talked about. And it's not that we came up with this. I mean, bigger brains than us did, but it really comes down to placement. If you shoot somebody with a full house 44 in the hand, it's not going to do them any good, but they may not stop unless they choose to stop. Whereas you shoot them, you get a central nervous system shot with a 22, they're probably going to shut down right now. So, those are the two extremes. And we've talked about the 22. I never recommend it as like your first call carry gun, but it's killed an awful lot of people. So it's about where you put that bullet, not necessarily what the bullet is or what it comes from. So,
well, people say, and I don't disagree, that a 9mm is effective. It's arguably, possibly, depending on the load, more effective than a 380, but it really depends on the load.
Yeah.
Because you can get a lightweight 9mm going really, really fast. Some companies load those, and I've shot gelatin with them, and the numbers look great. 1,800 feet per second. Oh my God, we're all going to die, right?
Yeah.
It'll change the course of the earth around the planet if you fire this gun.
Yeah.
And it penetrates 6 or 8 inches into gelatin, and the bullet falls apart. And I'm sorry.
And the gel jumps like 3 feet off the table.
And I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but if you shoot somebody with a Black Hills 380 Honey Badger and it penetrates 12 or 14 inches and cuts a good wound channel, that is more effective than your hypervelocity nuclear 9mm round. But having said all that, I would call myself an accomplished shooter, and I can control a 9mm platform really, really well, right?
Yep.
But I have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of rounds of experience, and I've been taught by the best trainers in the world. And so, yes, can I carry a 9mm effectively? Sure. Can I hit the target with it? Absolutely. When I went to Smith & Wesson, though, and they announced that Easy 380, we were with a group of writers there, and I just went, really? We have a polymer frame, really big 380 now? Why do we need this? Because you could do the same thing in 9mm. Yeah. And Tony Mealy was there, and he was going, ha 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 ha. Just you wait. right? So, okay. So they passed the guns out. I picked it up. I thought, wow, this feels really good. It's single stack. I really liked the way it felt. It had good sights, good trigger. And I ran the slide and I thought the slide was broke, it was just like so easy to do.
Yeah.
And I was looking around, all the other writers are all like going,
How about that?
So then we adjourned to the range and we loaded up and I was shooting and good Lord, you could write your name with it, pop,
Yeah.
pop, 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 and so we had a little informal shoot off amongst all the writers, which I won. Mike Humphreys was with us and he got second place. So that was fun because American Handgun got first and second place. Right. But I was shooting plates fast with this 380 and I thought, good Lord, you load this thing with some effective ammunition, and you could really light some bad guy up with it if you needed to,
Exactly.
And and it was flat shooting. And it was just like, whoa, beep, draw that gun. Suddenly 8 or 10 holes appear in the center chest of this target.
Yep.
And it changed everything. Truly, I just went and I threw I said, you know what? I was completely wrong about this, everybody, because we had a debrief. I said, but you showed us that up on the screen. I thought, great, another polymer pistol. What do we need this for?
Yeah.
But after actually doing it, which so many internet people don't do, they pass judgment, right? Oh, that's the stupidest gun I've ever seen in my life. Really? You've never even picked one up. Yeah. So,
well, I've got to say that my own journey, which I've not talked that much about, just about in the last year have I come up with the arthritis in my left hand, and I've started researching it. And I'm not a medical doctor, nor do I play one on TV, but I've been learning how common it is. And I will say when the 380 EZ dropped, I was editor of Guns Magazine, and that hit like a bombshell with our audience because I got so many letters saying I can shoot easily again. And I'm beginning to truly understand that, because when you say pain on manipulating the slide, it's so funny because I don't have really day-to-day pain, but the second you go to grasp something, and if it's true or not, again, I'm not a doctor, but doing my research, apparently that can be over 100 pounds of pressure when you go to grasp something like a slide. And if I do it just right, sometimes the pain is just intense. And I thought, wow. And I've minimally got the arthritis going. It's certainly getting worse, but I know a lot of folks that, their hands are gnarled after, really serious arthritis. I can't imagine what the pain of trying to manipulate the gun or even get your hand to work to manipulate the gun and then the recoil in it. So, I'm beginning to understand the wisdom and the value. Not that I didn't before, but now it's in my wheelhouse, and hopefully it won't get any worse. But we all know how that ends up happening. But it's been something that's really been noteworthy for me. That it goes from academic to real world, and that's always interesting.
Well, and you have to adapt your tools to your changing needs and abilities. Right. Yep. So I used to have a breaker bar in my shop that was about 20 inches long. Right. Use that for that 1/2 inch bolt that doesn't want to come off, wants to fight with you. Right.
I'm not asking.
I know. And I always managed fine with that. I needed to get the blades off the mower or something. Fine. Yeah. Well, I know, recently it's like, okay, well, this is like harder than it used to be, Yeah. So I was at Harbor Freight not too long ago and I got a 36-inch breaker bar. And so I'd stick that sucker on and pot off it comes, right? Well, it's the same thing. Yeah. I sold my beloved Terry Tussey Custom Officers ACP 45 aluminum frame. It was the first one ever customized. And it just got to the point to where the recoil hurt. And it was hard. I could manipulate it. I could load it. I could run it. I could shoot it. I could do all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
And so I replaced that basically with the same gun, but 9mm. It's a lot easier. Yeah. But boy, I'll tell you, that 380 EZ, if I was carrying a holster gun right now, I would, like in a daily basis, kind of, that's probably what I would do. I have a Hellcat in 9mm. But even that, I confess, I bring it out, I take it in the backyard to shoot a little bit just to stay current and stuff. And just before you pull the trigger, I kind of go, okay,
Yeah.
oh, this is going to
Yep.
hurt, yeah.
And I think you made an important distinction there. A lot of times, well, you can't shoot a 45. Well, yeah, I can shoot a 45, but if it's painful and difficult, why? So
Right.
that's where you got to adapt and
get a 36-inch breaker bar.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the answer to this whole question is John Taffin. There's a guy that literally wrote the book, many books. Manufacturers consulted with him before they came out with product. John was the guy. He was one of the gurus of handguns. And toward the end of his life, I was still his editor, which was quite an honor, but he was having a lot of trouble. And he talked about, he used to not worry about shooting a 44 or 357 full house. And it got to the point he was having trouble, but he was his mid 80s. So, years of doing that, I guess it would take its toll. But if John Taffin can say he's thinking about carrying a 380 or a downloaded 9mm, it's okay if you do too.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I first took over Handgunner, John was in his prime, basically. And he would write some article of 460, rolling and rolling a 375 line bow, or and he would shoot these, 400 grain bullet at 1,400 feet per second, and he would tell me, I loaded and I shot 400 rounds for this article. And it's like, I mean, I've had these guns, I've shot these guns, like 1 or 2 shots. It's like, okay, well, that hurt, and I'm not going to do that anymore. And John would shoot those all day out there. But then, he transitioned, and I know toward the last days, we saw a lot of articles about reloading the 38 special.
Yep.
Why the 380 is still fun to reload, and
exactly,
and just because it keeps it fun. But so back to the original thing. Would I advocate that you go buy a Colt 1908 and load 380 ball ammo in and make John Browning smile? I mean, not really. If you want to have fun with it, of course, do that. Sure. I do it. Yeah. But I think if you're going to carry a modern design 380, a pocket 380, like from Ruger or something, a medium-sized frame gun, one of the Smith & Wesson shieldy kind of guns or something, that EZ is a wonderful gun, and just load it with good ammunition. Pick out your favorite manufacturer, Federal, Winchester, whatever, Buffalo Bar, whatever, whoever you want. I like Black Hills. Pick out your favorite ammunition, load it, make sure the gun works with it, and then go about your business. Yep. I mean, you're fine.
Well, it's kind of like our last program. If you haven't checked that out, we talk about standard cost revolvers, as Roy pointed out. And it was a great analogy. Regular, super, or super grade, and then premium or whatever gas. There's no reason we should call them cheap or budget or inexpensive revolvers. But anyway, it kind of applies here. And I've seen that. You just carry a 380, or that's just a 380. Well, unless you're willing to stand down range and take a few of those hits, there's no looking down on the 380. And hopefully that's one of our big takeaways from this entire episode is there's no looking down. Again, there are other choices. And if you're able to handle a more bigger, more powerful, whatever your definition of that is, great. But there's no dishonor, and you're certainly not undergunned by carrying a 380. So if you catch yourself, especially younger people, it's just a 380. No, you're not getting the full picture there.
Well, because think about this. Okay. There was a time in my life that I carried a 6.5-inch Model 29 44 Magnum in a vertical shoulder holster, a Bianchi X15 shoulder, as an off-duty gun. I actually carried it as a backup gun.
Roy is so SoCal, Southern California. You were the guy.
I was one of those guys. I pointed that gun at a bad guy one time, and I have to say it did get his attention.
I bet.
Yeah. It was like, I guess you're serious. Anyway, but it'd be as if I'm carrying. I carried low range 44 Magnum loads in it because there really wasn't any effective 44 special ammo at the time.
Yeah.
And but that would be like me looking at someone who's carrying a 45 or a 9mm and saying, "Oh, you're only carrying a 9mm."
Yeah.
Well, you're going to die unless you have a 44, right? And then
Yep.
they go, "Yeah, but I mean, if you shoot somebody with a 9mm, they're going to, it's effective, right?" Yeah, okay. Well, then guess what, boys and girls? That's the same analogy. If you're carrying a 9mm, you look at somebody with a 380 and say, "Oh, no, you're only carrying a 380." Well, no, actually, that's effective too. And
Yep.
I'm sorry, it is in the real world. I know that we're going to get comments who are going to say, "You don't know what you're talking about. And a 9mm has 3 times the energy and knockdown power and all that. And all that's completely bullshit. It doesn't matter in the real world. Just poking holes through people and they bleed out and they die or they stop doing what they're doing."
Yeah.
And from my experience in the field, I mean, I have seen people shot with 380s and they're laying there on the ground bleeding out.
Yeah.
So they're not like dancing around going, "Ha, you shot me with a 380." And as a matter of fact, I remember vividly, we had a homicide with a guy who had an OMC 380 backup, just like yours.
Yeah.
And he shot somebody in a car. He was a bad guy, but he shot somebody in a car. One shot, 380 ball, hit this guy kind of a cross chest shot, killed him dead as a rock, And I remember at the time, there was even a lot of cops who were like going, "Whoa, a 380?
Yeah.
It's like, yes, a 380,
If you put a bullet, say a 9mm sized bullet, someplace where there's a lot of veins and arteries and nerves and stuff, bad things will happen.
Bad things will happen. So I think that too many people are worried, and you and I have heard it thousands of times, is they say, "I'm a family man. I live at home. I have a wife. I have 2 kids. I have a Smith & Wesson Model 10 my dad gave me. I load it with 38 special, fill in the blank, doesn't really matter. I've been reading on forums that unless I get a high capacity 9mm with a laser and a red dot sight, that my family is in danger," right?
Yeah.
And what do we say? I know what we say, because you're going to answer the same thing. I'm going to say, "No, you're fine."
Yeah.
Right? Just go buy some ammo, go out, shoot the gun, learn to be safe, learn how to hit the target, get a good flashlight, you'll be fine. And I want people to have that anxiety reduced when they listen to this show, is that if you have a pocket 380, you're probably fine. Learn how to run it, make sure it runs with the ammunition, think a little bit about your tactics you're going to get involved in. Do you have a flashlight in your pocket? All that stuff you should be worrying about.
Yeah.
Not the fact you have a 380. So, and I know people are going to disagree with us, and that's fine. I like that. Let's all disagree. but keep that open parachute. Yeah.
I often point out that the gun writing industry is to blame for a lot of that. How many times, and I will say American Handgunner and Guns, we never did that, but it's a trite insider kind of thing. And I know other gun people laugh about it too. The great 9mm versus 45 shootout. How many thousands of articles were written about that, and every single one of them was the same of, well, I guess they're both okay, or you'd go the other extreme. You're going to die if you carry the 9, or you're going to die if you try to use the 45 when the high-speed 9. And I really think that was one of those lazy man articles when they didn't have anything else to talk about, or they wanted to push their particular, the company that just signed up and bought a bunch of advertising. Yeah. You would be surprised at the times that their ammunition came out on top in these scientific tests. And it's our fault. And it's funny. I've seen 9mm versus 380 shootout. It's like, okay, really? But I guess you got to write something, right? I don't know.
I saw a video just not too long ago. It was a pretty well-known YouTube guy. His pretty credible channel, and, it was the old, is a 380 really enough, right?
Yeah.
And he invests in these very expensive, real, what do you call it? Physiological, real
the torsos with all the bones,
the gel and blood inside and everything, right? And he has his super high speed cameras and stuff. And he's a vet, I'm sure, of some kind. He knows his stuff. I respect him completely. I not just because I agree with 99% of what he says, but because he's factual. He just says, I don't know. Let's see,
Yeah.
and he shoots it. And, so he had one of those 380 EZs and he was shooting something like Lehigh hot ammo, a lot like Honey Badger from
Yeah.
Black Hills. And so he loaded it up and he shoots and he hits his target center chest and the blood goes right. And it like penetrates all the way to the back, and he was like, huh.
Oh.
All right. Well, I mean, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
And then he did it again with a 9mm. And the 9mm was the same thing. It was like a pretty hot Lehigh load or something like that. And it struck a little more, it was like a little bigger splash kind of. And I think it penetrated a little bit more. But even he said either one would have done the job today, And I respect him because he did a show with that baby Browning, the 25 ACP, the little tiny baby Browning, right?
Yeah.
He said, is this really the smallest defensive pistol in the world, right? Of course, everyone's dripping sarcasm and all that.
Yeah.
So, but he started shooting it and it was like worked and it hit the target. And he shot one of these gel things and 25 will penetrate like son of a gun.
Yeah.
Goes in, bounces off ribs and through your heart and ends up in your brain,
Yeah.
And then he shot at a 100-yard torso target. And it was really funny. He was like first shot. And then you could tell he got the, elevation. And it was like bang, ting, bang, ting, bang, ting. And he was like going, okay, I'm amazed. But that's what we're talking about. In other words, here's somebody who did the real work. He actually he tested it and proved that it actually works.
Yep.
And so just believe it.
Yep. And I think I know who you're talking about because I like him too for the exact same reasons. Mainly he's willing to go, I didn't know that, or I've heard him say, well, I was wrong about that. So I think that's kind of the undercurrent of everything we do here is be willing to see different ideas and outcomes and be willing to go, okay, I always thought the 44 Magnum was, what needed to be carried. And now I've realized, sure, carry it if you want to. But most people that claim to carry stuff like that, they talk a lot and shoot little. So that's right. Something.
Grand Thumb. That's his name. Grand Thumb. Yeah, that's it. I couldn't remember his name. So I mean, I liked him too because he said, "What happens when you drop guns in mud?" So he took like a dozen like really good quality guns and dropped them in mud and stomped on them a little bit, picked them up and tried to shoot them. And it was always fascinating to see what really happens. And so, that's how I was with the 380 because when that EZ got introduced, that like really opened that world up to me again. Because I never wanted to be shot with a 380, but I also didn't really want to carry one, right?
Yeah.
So after that, I started really looking at ammunition. I looked at Buffalo Boar's offerings. I looked at, some of these other high-performance ammunitions, and I did gel testing, and I just went, I was mistaken. Yeah. So, all right.
Well, let us know what you think. Is the 380 the answer to your prayers, or will it get you killed? That's the thumbnail we have to use for YouTube. Will it get you killed? Which sadly, it's a proven fact, and all the consultants will tell you because we did that one time. Roy did one of his faces, and I put it on the thumbnail. And it did well. People like that kind of stuff, but we try to stay away too much from the clickbait. But anyway, let us know what you think. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. We read all of them. Roy certainly does, and he always forwards me the best ones. Or you can reach me, editor@gunspodcast.us. And as we've said many times, we like to hear what you've got to say, and we always come up with topic ideas for future shows. So reach out to us because we're those old guys sitting at the end of the counter at the gun store, and we'll cuss and discuss all of the ideas presented. So anyway, make sure you stop by gunspodcast.us. You can sign up for our notifications and read more stuff, kind of the backstory of what's going on in the podcast, and of course our merch. And I would be remiss without reminding you to go to gunsmagazine.com. I was the editor of the paper magazine until it went away, but most of the articles are there. We still put new stuff up. Dabs is there, Tank Hoover's there, I'm there, John Taffin, of course, and Mike Venturino, and Mark Hampton, and all those guys that I always felt like a little kid sitting at the big kids dinner, or the adults dinner table, getting to be their editor. So all that stuff is still there, plus more and new, and you can sign up for our newsletters. So any final parting words there, Roy Huntington, my illustrious co-host?
No, I just keep an open mind. Don't be a jerk.
Wow. How do you
yeah,
feel?
I know. I mean, don't you? I get tired of it.
Yeah.
It's that old Jane, you ignorant slut, right? It's like, no, I mean, we have what the opinions we have are based on our real world experience, seeing this stuff happen in the real world. We're not just guessing at home in the basement of your mom's house, playing on your computer. So just keep an open mind. And if a 380 works good for you, then do it. And then learn it and embrace it and understand it and learn its limitations, and you will be fine.
You will be fine. The sun will come up tomorrow. So, all right. Well, with those parting words, of course, that was Roy Huntington, and I'm your host, Brent Wheat. And it's that time again to remind you yet again. Now get out there and get shooting.